The phone rang at 3:17 a.m., and in that instant, Sarah Thompson knew her perfect suburban life in Evergreen, Ohio was about to shatter forever. She fumbled for the receiver in the dark, her heart pounding before she even heard the voice on the other end, a detective from the local sheriff's office, calm but urgent. "Mrs. Thompson, there's been an accident involving your husband. You need to come to St. Mary's Hospital right away." Sarah's world tilted as she threw on clothes, her mind racing through the mundane details of the evening before. Mark kissing her goodnight after his late shift at the tech firm, promising he'd be home by midnight for their anniversary weekend getaway. But he never made it. Or did he? By the time she arrived at the hospital, Mark was gone, declared dead on arrival from a single-car crash on the winding rural road outside town, his BMW wrapped around a tree. No witnesses, no skid marks, just a blood alcohol level twice the legal limit. Sarah collapsed in the ER waiting room, sobs racking her body as nurses comforted her, whispering about how these things happen, how grief comes in waves. But deep down, in a place she barely acknowledged, a tiny voice whispered, Mark hadn't had a drink in 5 years, not since his AA days after college. He was sober, disciplined, the kind of man who planned everything. So why did the toxicology report say otherwise? The funeral was a blur of black suits and sympathetic hugs in the crisp autumn air of Evergreen Cemetery, a small Midwestern town where everyone knew everyone, nestled between cornfields and strip malls, the kind of place Americans dream of raising families. Safe, predictable, all-American. Sarah, 38, with her auburn hair tied back and her yoga-toned figure hidden under a modest dress, stood graveside clutching their 2 kids, 12-year-old Emma, wide-eyed and silent, and 10-year-old Jake, who kept asking when Daddy was coming back from his long nap. Friends from the PTA and Mark's coworkers at Apex Solutions, a cybersecurity firm in nearby Columbus, offered casseroles and condolences. He was such a good man, they said, loving father, devoted husband. But Sarah noticed the glances, the hushed conversations. Mark had been under stress lately. Long hours, whispers of layoffs, arguments about money. They'd been married 15 years, high school sweethearts from this very town, but the spark had faded into routine. Soccer practices, mortgage payments, quiet dinners where conversation dwindled to logistics. Still, he adored her, or so she thought. The life insurance policy would pay out $2 million, enough to secure the kids' future, maybe even move to a bigger house. But as the days turned to weeks, doubt crept in like fog rolling off the Ohio River. First, it was the anonymous text, "Ask about the woman in Cleveland." Sarah stared at her phone, heart racing, assuming it was a prank. Then came the credit card statements she found hidden in Mark's desk, charges for hotels in downtown Cleveland, flowers from a shop she'd never heard of, dinners at romantic spots. Her stomach churned as she pieced it together. Mark had been seeing someone, a younger woman perhaps. The thrill of betrayal mixed with grief, turning her sorrow into a burning rage. How could he, after everything? The vows, the family, the life they'd built in this quiet corner of America where fidelity was supposed to mean something. She hired a private investigator, Tom Riley, a grizzled ex-cop from Cincinnati with a no-nonsense drawl and a penchant for black coffee. "Ma'am, affairs happen more than you think in these suburbs," he said over coffee at the local diner, the kind with checkered tablecloths and bottomless refills. "But something about this crash don't sit right. No brake marks on a dry night? And the booze. Your husband was sober, you say?" Tom dug deeper, uncovering parallels that chilled Sarah to the bone. Mark's accident mirrored cases she'd read about in true crime podcasts, stories of husbands staging suicides or crashes to escape double lives, or worse, wives pushed to the edge by infidelity. But this was different. As Tom interviewed Mark's coworkers, a pattern emerged. Mark had been paranoid lately, mentioning someone following him, deleting emails frantically, changing passwords. One colleague, Dave, confided over beers. Mark said he stumbled onto something big at work, Apex was bidding on a government contract, cyber defense for military bases. He thought there was embezzlement, or worse, data leaks to foreign entities. Sarah's mind reeled. Was Mark's death not an accident, not suicide, but murder? The psychological weight pressed on her, guilt for not noticing his stress, anger at his possible affair, fear that someone was watching her now. Nights blurred into insomnia, shadows in the house taking on menacing shapes, every creak a footstep. Emma started having nightmares, waking screaming about Daddy's car exploding, even though there was no explosion. Jake withdrew, spending hours on his iPad researching car crashes. Sarah turned to therapy. Dr. Elena Vasquez, a compassionate Latina psychologist in town who specialized in grief and trauma. "This is complicated grief," Elena said in her soothing voice during sessions in a cozy office lined with books on mindfulness and resilience. Betrayal trauma layered on loss. It's like your mind is protecting you by questioning everything, but we have to ground in facts. Yet the facts were slippery. The anonymous texts continued. Photos of Sarah at the grocery store, at the kids' school, captioned, "He knew too much, you will too." Suspense built as Sarah and Tom uncovered more. The woman in Cleveland was real, Leela Lang, 28, a graphic designer Mark met at a conference. But Leela was devastated, claiming Mark ended things weeks ago, saying he feared for his life. He said his boss, Victor Hale, was involved in something shady, selling classified algorithms on the dark web. Victor Hale, Apex's CEO, a slick, charismatic type with a mansion on the lake and political connections, the epitome of American success. Tom tailed him, finding meetings with shady figures in parking garages. Then the break-in. Sarah's home ransacked while she was at Emma's soccer game. Nothing stolen, but Mark's old laptop missing. Panic set in. Were they after evidence Mark hid? Sarah's emotions swung wildly. Terror that her family was next, determination to uncover the truth for her children, profound loneliness in a house that once felt safe. She turned to her best friend, Megan, over wine on the back porch, the kind of heart-to-heart American moms have under string lights. "I feel like I'm losing my mind," Sarah admitted, tears flowing. "Was our marriage a lie? Or is this bigger, something that could destroy everything?" Megan hugged her. "You're strong, Sarah, stronger than you know. Mark loved you, flaws and all." But doubt lingered, psychological torment gnawing, gaslighting herself, wondering if grief was inventing conspiracies. Then the twist. Tom discovered the toxicology report was tampered. Mark's blood samples switched at the lab, owned by a subsidiary of Apex. And the affair? Staged emails, planted charges. Mark wasn't cheating. He was investigating, using Leela as a cover to access Cleveland's servers. The crash, sabotage, brakes cut, alcohol injected post-mortem to stage drunk driving. Victor Hale, facing exposure for treasonous data sales to Chinese operatives, had Mark eliminated. But proof was elusive, suspense mounting as Sarah received a final text, "Stop digging or the kids pay." In a heart-pounding climax, Sarah confronted Victor at a company gala in Columbus, wired by Tom and the FBI, finally involved after Tom's tip. Under the chandeliers and fake smiles of corporate America, Victor smirked. Mark was naive, thinking he could play hero. National security? It's business. But Sarah, fueled by love, loss, and maternal fury, recorded his confession. Chaos ensued, security rushing in, Victor fleeing but captured in the parking lot. Justice came swiftly. Arrests, headlines about corporate espionage threatening American defense. Sarah emerged scarred but resilient, the psychological scars healing through therapy, family bonds strengthening. Emma and Jake thrived, understanding their dad as a quiet hero. Sarah wrote a book about it, speaking at events on grief, betrayal, and truth, reminding audiences that in the heartland of America, darkness lurks behind perfect facades, but also unbreakable strength. Years later, in a new home with views of rolling hills, Sarah watched her kids play, a small smile breaking through. Life's parallels to those dark true crime stories, infidelity illusions, corporate greed, hidden threats, had nearly broken her. But in facing them, she found redemption. And in quiet moments, she felt Mark's presence, whispering approval. The end came not with shatter, but with quiet triumph, the American spirit enduring. Sarah sat alone in the kitchen of her split-level home on Maplewood Drive, the one with the American flag waving gently from the front porch and the minivan parked on the driveway, staring at the final text message on her burner phone, the one Tom had insisted she buy for safety. Justice served, but eyes are still on you. Disappear for a while. It was from an unknown number, sent just hours after Victor Hale's arrest made national headlines on CNN and Fox News alike. The kind of story that gripped America. Ohio tech CEO charged with espionage and murder in shocking suburban conspiracy. Reporters camped outside her house for weeks, microphones thrust toward her as she shielded Emma and Jake on the way to school, asking how it felt to be the widow who brought down a traitor. Sarah gave no comments, her face pale and composed, the perfect image of Midwestern resilience. But inside, the psychological storm raged on. Therapy with Dr. Alina helped unpack the layers, complicated grief intertwined with post-traumatic stress, the constant hypervigilance that made her check locks 3 times before bed, the irrational guilt that somehow she should have saved Mark, noticed the signs sooner. "You're experiencing survivor guilt," Elena explained during a session in early spring as cherry blossoms bloomed outside the window, a stark contrast to the darkness within. And betrayal trauma, even though the affair was fabricated. Your brain wired for trust in your marriage, and it was violated by deception on multiple levels. Sarah nodded, tears streaming as she described the nightmares, reliving the phone call, imagining Mark's final moments, trapped in the car as it veered off the road, knowing someone had tampered with his brakes. But life demanded she move forward, for the kids. Emma, now thriving in middle school honor classes, had started journaling her feelings, turning grief into words, while Jake joined Little League, channeling energy into baseball swings that echoed across the neighborhood fields on sunny Saturdays. The community rallied, bake sales for a scholarship fund in Mark's name, a plaque at the local park dedicating a bench to a hero who protected our nation. The $2 million life insurance paid out cleanly once the sabotage was proven, no drunk driving clause triggered, allowing Sarah to pay off the mortgage and set up college funds. Yet peace eluded her. Whispers persisted, coworkers at Apex quitting en masse, rumors of a deeper network, Victor's accomplices still at large. Tom Riley called one rainy afternoon in May, his voice gravelly over the line. "Sarah, I hate to do this, but there's more. FBI raided Victor's home and found a ledger. Names, payments. Yours is on there, marked monitor." Her blood ran cold. Was this paranoia or real threat? The suspense built anew as strange occurrences mounted. A black SUV idling across the street, gone when she looked again. Phone calls with heavy breathing, then hang-ups. An email from Mark's old account, long deactivated. "I'm sorry. Run." Hackers? Ghosts? Her mind spiraled into psychological depths, questioning reality. Was this gaslighting from beyond the grave, or enemies closing in? She confided in Megan again, over coffee at the same diner, now a place of bittersweet memories. "I thought it was over," Sarah whispered, glancing over her shoulder. "But it feels like I'm in one of those true crime documentaries, the ones where the widow thinks she's safe, then bam, next victim." Megan, loyal as ever, squeezed her hand. "You're not crazy, but maybe get out of town. Take the kids on that vacation you planned for your anniversary." The idea took root. Sarah booked a cabin in the Smoky Mountains, far from Ohio's flatlands, a place of misty peaks and hiking trails where Americans escape to reconnect with nature and themselves. They left in June, the drive south therapeutic, windows down, country music on the radio, singing along to Tim McGraw and Miranda Lambert, Emma and Jake laughing in the back seat for the first time in months. The cabin was idyllic. Wood beams, stone fireplace, views of rolling green hills that reminded Sarah of freedom, the vastness of America, where one could vanish if needed. But even here, suspense lingered. On the third night, a knock at the door after dark. No one there, just a note slipped under. He talked too much. You did too. Panic surged. Sarah grabbed the kids, drove to the nearest town, checked into a motel under a false name. Calling Tom from a payphone, old school like in the movies, he urged her to contact Special Agent Ramirez, the FBI lead on the case, a no-nonsense Texan who'd interviewed her post-arrest. Ramirez met them in Gatlinburg over pancakes at a bustling diner filled with tourists in hiking boots. Mrs. Thompson were aware of the threats. Victor sang like a bird in custody, named a contact in the Chinese consulate, but also a domestic handler, someone high up. We're closing in, but until then, witness protection? Sarah recoiled. Uproot everything? New names? New lives? For how long? The psychological toll weighed heavy, identity loss on top of widowhood. I can't erase who we are, she told Ramirez. Mark died protecting this country. We won't hide like cowards. Admiration flickered in the agent's eyes. Brave woman. Then we'll protect you openly. Detail on your home when you return. Back in Evergreen by July 4th, fireworks booming over the town lake, families picnicking with red, white, and blue everything, Sarah felt a shift, strength burgeoning from the ordeal. She started running again. Dawn jogs through suburban streets lined with manicured lawns, reclaiming her body and mind. Therapy evolved, EMDR for trauma processing, vivid recall of memories, releasing pent-up emotions in cathartic sobs. Emma opened up about anger, at God, at the bad men, at missing her dad's hugs. Jake drew pictures of superheroes, Mark as the central figure battling villains. Community support deepened, a GoFundMe for security upgrades, neighbors taking shifts watching the house. Then, in August, the breakthrough. Tom uncovered the handler, Senator Hargrove's chief of staff, a slimy operative named Derek Voss, funneling OPSEC's contracts for kickbacks, covering tracks with threats. Raids followed, headlines screaming, congressional aide implicated in espionage scandal rocking Heartland. Voss arrested at his D.C. apartment, ties to foreign agents confirmed. Ramirez called personally. Sarah, it's over. Really over this time. All loose ends tied. Relief washed over her like summer rain, but emotions complex. Vindication for Mark's honor, sorrow that he'd never see justice served. Fall brought healing milestones. Sarah volunteered at the local VA, counseling vets on PTSD, drawing parallels to her own invisible wounds. Trauma doesn't discriminate. Suburban mom or battlefield soldier, pain is pain, she'd say in group sessions, her voice steady. She dated tentatively a kind school principal named Ryan, patient and kind, understanding when she pulled back from intimacy, triggers from betrayal illusions lingering. The kids approved. He's nice, Mom. Dad would like him. Holidays approached. Thanksgiving with extended family, turkey and football on TV, gratitude lists where Sarah wrote Truth Revealed atop hers. Christmas lights twinkling on Maplewood Drive, carols in the air, a new normal emerging. Psychologically, she embraced post-traumatic growth, deeper empathy, fierce protectiveness, appreciation for life's fragility. One snowy evening in December, exactly a year after the crash, Sarah stood at Mark's grave, a fresh wreath in hand. "We made it," she whispered to the headstone. "The kids are okay. I'm okay. You were the hero all along." A gentle wind rustled leaves, almost a reply. Back home, hot cocoa with the children, stories of Daddy's bravery, sanitized for young ears, but true in spirit. America, with its flaws and shadows, corporate greed, political corruption, personal betrayals, had tested her, but in its core values of justice and resilience, it upheld her. Parallels to real-life scandals, like Hawaii infiltrations or insider threats in defense contracting, echoed in her story, a cautionary tale whispered in book clubs and podcasts nationwide. Sarah's memoir, Shattered Facade, A Widow's Fight for Truth in Suburban America, hit shelves, climbing bestseller lists, interviews on Good Morning America, where she spoke eloquently. Evil hides in plain sight, behind perfect lawns and smiles, but so does courage. Readers across the USA connected, messages pouring in from women who'd lost husbands suspiciously, from whistleblowers' families, finding solace in her triumph. And in quiet moments, Sarah knew. The thrill of danger faded, suspense resolved into peace, emotions tempered into wisdom. Life's real parallels, grief, deception, redemption, wove her stronger. Evergreen, Ohio remained home, a microcosm of the nation, flawed, beautiful, enduring. As 2026 dawned, Sarah looked forward, heart full, ready for whatever came next. The phone no longer rang with dread at 3 a.m. Instead, it buzzed with hope. Friends, family, new beginnings. Mark's legacy lived in their strength, a beacon that in America, truth could prevail, one brave soul at a time. The president himself called one evening, voice warm and folksy. "Mrs. Thompson, your husband was a true American hero. The nation owes him, and you, a debt we can never fully repay." A ceremony was planned at the White House, posthumous Medal of Freedom for Mark. Sarah and the kids invited to stand on the South Lawn as the citation was read. But with glory came new shadows. Threats resurfaced, online forums buzzing with conspiracy theories blaming Mark for economic fallout, death wishes aimed at the family who started it all. FBI protection ramped up again, agents in unmarked cars outside the house, cybersecurity sweeps of devices. Psychologically, Sarah wrestled regression, hypervigilance creeping back, second-guessing every stranger at the grocery store. She leaned on Ryan, on Megan, on Elena. "This is vicarious triumph mixed with renewed threat response," Elena explained. "Your nervous system remembers danger even when the mind knows victory." Summer brought the D.C. trip, private jet courtesy of the government, staying at a historic hotel near the mall. Emma and Jake wide-eyed at monuments, touching the Vietnam Wall, whispering about Daddy's name soon joining heroes. The ceremony was emotional, Marine band playing, flags snapping in the breeze. Sarah in a simple navy dress clutching the kids' hands as the president pinned the medal on a framed photo of Mark smiling in his Apex ID badge. Tears streamed nationally, cameras capturing the moment America loves. Ordinary family enduring extraordinary loss, vindicated by truth. Back home, life settled into a new rhythm. Sarah founded the Mark Thompson Foundation, supporting whistleblower families, funding cybersecurity education in public schools, partnering with veterans groups. Speaking engagements shifted from grief to empowerment, college campuses, corporate ethics conferences, even testifying before Congress on protecting insiders who spot corruption. Ryan proposed on a crisp October evening, down on one knee in the backyard under the same stars where Mark once pointed out constellations to the kids. "I know I'll never replace him," Ryan said, voice thick, rings sparkling. "But I want to walk beside you, help raise these amazing kids, build a life full of love and safety." Sarah said yes through happy tears, Emma and Jake whooping approval, hugging them all in a pile of joy. The wedding was small, perfect, held at the local church where she and Mark married, but this time filled with hope instead of hidden cracks. Megan, maid of honor, Tom Riley giving her away with gruff pride, Agent Ramirez in the pews. Vows exchanged under autumn leaves, reception in the community center with potluck dishes and a country band playing Garth Brooks and Shania Twain. America watched snippets on morning shows. Widow of Apex hero finds love again. Heartwarming second chapter. By winter 2027, blended family life felt natural. Ryan moving in, redecorating with Sarah's touch. No erasing Mark. Photos still prominent, stories shared openly. Jake calling Ryan coach affectionately. Emma seeking his advice on boys. Therapy became family sessions, processing transitions, honoring the past while embracing present. Sarah ran her first half marathon, crossing the finish line in Columbus with Ryan and the kids cheering, medal around her neck, mirroring Mark's in spirit. Psychological scars faded to faint lines, resilience forged in fire, empathy deepened, faith in humanity restored by the outpouring of support from strangers coast to coast. One December evening, exactly 3 years after the crash, snow falling softly outside, the family decorated the Christmas tree, Ryan lifting Jake to place the star, Emma hanging ornaments Mark bought on family vacations. Sarah paused, gazing at a photo ornament of their old family of 4, heart full rather than aching. Mark's presence lingered not as ghost, but guardian, his courage the foundation their new happiness stood on. Later, tucked into bed with Ryan, she whispered, "Do you think he's proud?" Ryan kissed her forehead. "Baby, he's beaming down, knowing you're safe, happy, raising warriors just like him." Outside, Evergreen slept under a blanket of white, American flags on porches standing sentinel. Sarah's journey from shattered widow to national symbol of strength mirrored the real-life sagas that captivate the nation, ordinary people facing extraordinary evil, refusing to break. The Apex leaks reshaped policy, stronger whistleblower protections signed into law bearing Mark's name, tech oversight tightened, a reminder that vigilance is eternal. And in quiet Midwestern homes across the country, families hugged tighter, talked deeper, valued truth more, because one woman in Ohio showed them how. Sarah Thompson's story didn't end with tragedy or even triumph. It continued in everyday moments: school drop-offs, Friday night football games, summer barbecues, love that healed without erasing. Proof that in America, light can follow the darkest nights, resilience can outlast any threat, and love, widened, not replaced, can make a family whole again. The phone no longer rang with dread. It rang with invitations, laughter, new beginnings, and somewhere, Mark smiled. By the fall of 2028, the Thompson house on Maplewood Drive had become something of a quiet legend in Evergreen. Kids on bikes slowing down to point at the porch where the famous lady lived, the one whose husband stopped the bad guys and whose story played on Netflix in a limited series that everybody binge-watched over Thanksgiving weekend. Sarah never asked for any of it. She still drove the same minivan, still volunteered at the school book fair, still made sloppy joes for Friday night football tailgates with Ryan and the kids. But life had stretched wider than the cul-de-sac now. Speaking invitations from West Point, Silicon Valley boardrooms, even the United Nations, and she accepted the ones that felt right, always flying home the same day if she could, because Emma had volleyball tournaments and Jake had science fairs, and nothing in the world was more important than being in the bleachers cheering loud enough to embarrass them. Ryan took the assistant superintendent job in the district, meaning more meetings but also more flexibility to travel with her when the foundation needed both of them at an event. They made a good team. He handled logistics and kept her grounded with gentle teasing about her newfound fear of flying after too many turbulent landings, while she reminded him to eat something besides gas station coffee on long drives. Therapy had evolved into something lighter, quarterly tune-ups with Dr. Elena, now more friend than clinician, where they laughed about how far Sarah had come from the woman who once jumped at shadows to the one who now spoke calmly to rooms full of generals about moral courage. The kids were growing fast. Emma, 15 now, tall and fierce like her mother, but with Mark's analytical mind, had won a national essay contest on whistleblower protections and read it aloud at the Capitol, voice steady as cameras flashed. Jake, 13 and all elbows and knees, pitched for the varsity JV team as an 8th grader and wore Mark's old Apex lanyard around his neck during games, saying it brought him luck. They talked about their dad openly. No hushed tones, no tiptoeing around. Ryan encouraged it, even built a small memory corner in the basement rec room, Mark's medal in a shadow box, photos from family vacations, the kids' artwork depicting him as a superhero in a button-down shirt. Some nights, the 4 of them watched old home videos, Mark teaching Emma to ride a bike, Mark and Jake building Lego spaceships, tears mixing with laughter until someone inevitably yelled for more popcorn. But even in this season of hard-won peace, ripples from the past still reached them. In early 2029, a journalist from The Atlantic published a long-form piece questioning whether the Apex leaks had truly been Mark's solo work or if he'd had help from a shadowy government insider, hinting at deeper intelligence community involvement. Conspiracy podcasts latched onto it, spinning wild theories that Mark was a plant all along, that Sarah knew more than she let on. Hate mail trickled in again, anonymous envelopes with clipped magazine letters, social media trolls accusing her of profiting off tragedy. The FBI flagged the worst ones, but Sarah refused extra protection this time. "We're not hiding anymore," she told Agent Ramirez over coffee when he checked in. "Let them talk. Truth has a way of outlasting noise." Psychologically, she noticed the difference in herself. The old spike of fear at a strange car on the street now registered as mild alertness, gone in minutes instead of days. She credited the work, years of EMDR, cognitive restructuring, and plain old stubborn refusal to let evil win. Summer brought an unexpected invitation. The Department of Defense wanted to name a new cybersecurity training facility at Fort Meade after Mark, the Mark Thompson Center for Ethical Innovation. Sarah flew to Maryland with the kids and Ryan for the dedication, standing on a stage under a bright May sky as a general unveiled the plaque. Emma spoke briefly, thanking the soldiers for their service, and saying her dad always believed ordinary people could do extraordinary things if they chose right over easy. Cameras caught Jake saluting awkwardly when the color guard passed, and the clip went viral. America loves a kid in a blazer trying to do the respectful thing. That summer, they took the big family vacation they'd postponed for years. 2 weeks driving the Pacific Coast Highway in a rented RV, stopping at Redwood Forest, crashing waves at Big Sur, eating crab in San Francisco, Disneyland for Jake's birthday because some traditions matter more than cool points. Sarah posted a few photos, nothing flashy, just the 4 of them grinning in front of the Golden Gate Bridge, and the comments flooded with heart emojis from strangers who'd followed their story. One night, camped near Monterey, stars thick overhead. Ryan built a fire while the kids roasted marshmallows. Sarah slipped away to the beach alone, waves rhythmic and comforting, and spoke quietly to the ocean the way she sometimes still spoke to Mark. "We're good," she said. "Really good. The kids are happy. I'm happy. You'd like Ryan. He's steady, kind, makes us laugh every day. Thank you for fighting so hard. We're carrying it forward." A breeze answered, warm and gentle, and she smiled through tears that felt more like release than pain. Back at the fire, Ryan handed her a s'more and pulled her close, the kids arguing good-naturedly about whose turn it was to pick the next playlist. Ordinary magic, hard-earned. By 2030, the foundation had grown into a respected force, millions in grants to protect whistleblowers, partnerships with tech companies for ethics training, a scholarship program sending first-gen college kids into cybersecurity careers. Sarah stepped back from day-to-day operations, hiring a dynamic young director who'd once been a protege of Mark's, trusting the mission to the next generation. She and Ryan talked about adopting, maybe a little one who needed a home, maybe fostering first, because their hearts and house had room, and the kids were old enough to be amazing big siblings. Emma started dating a sweet band kid who blushed whenever Sarah teased him, and Jake discovered girls and acne in equal measure, slamming doors one minute and hugging her the next. Normal teenage chaos, the best kind. One December evening in 2031, 6 years almost to the day since the crash, snow fell thick and soft over Evergreen. The house glowed with Christmas lights Ryan insisted on hanging himself despite his fear of ladders, the tree fragrant in the living room, presents already piling up because none of them could wait. Sarah stood at the kitchen island wrapping one last gift, Ryan beside her pouring hot cider, when the doorbell rang. Jake thundered down the stairs to answer it and came back with a small padded envelope addressed to the whole family, no return label. Inside was a flash drive and a handwritten note on plain paper. "From someone your husband saved. Thank you." Ryan raised an eyebrow, but Sarah recognized the protocol. FBI had taught her how these things sometimes arrived. They called Ramirez, who came personally the next morning, running the drive in a secure laptop. It contained declassified files, intercepted foreign communications proving the Apex leaks had directly prevented the compromise of 3 major U.S. weapon systems, saving untold lives and billions in defense spending. At the bottom, a single line from an anonymous intelligence officer. Mark Thompson didn't just expose corruption, he preserved American advantage for a generation. His family should know the full measure of his impact. Sarah read it aloud to Ryan and the kids that night by the fireplace, voice steady until the end when it cracked. Emma hugged her first, then Jake piled on, Ryan wrapping around all of them until they were a tangled, laughing, crying mess on the rug. Later, after the kids went to bed, Sarah and Ryan sat quietly, watching snow pile against the windows. "He did it," she whispered. "He really did it. All of it." Ryan kissed her temple, "And you made sure the world knew. You both won." Outside, Evergreen slept under its white blanket, porch lights glowing on American flags dusted with snow. Inside, the Thompson family, wider now, stronger, forged in fire and tempered by time, carried on the legacy not as burden, but as light. The phone didn't ring with dread anymore. It rang with college acceptances for Emma, scouting calls for Jake's pitching arm, foundation updates about lives changed, friends inviting them to New Year's Eve bonfires. Real-life parallels, the ones that had nearly destroyed them, had instead revealed the deepest truth, that in the heart of America, in ordinary houses on ordinary streets, extraordinary courage lives. And love, stubborn and fierce, outlasts everything. Sarah turned off the lights, took Ryan's hand, and headed upstairs. Tomorrow would bring whatever it brought: school projects, work deadlines, teenage drama, maybe even new adventures. But tonight, peace reigned. Mark's story, their story, America's story in microcosm, tragedy met with truth, loss answered with legacy, fear conquered by unrelenting forward motion. And somewhere in the quiet dark, a gentle presence lingered, not haunting, but guarding, proud, at rest. The end, for real this time, a full-circle American epic of grief, thriller-level danger, psychological depth, justice, healing, and the enduring power of family and truth. The story that began with a phone call shattering a suburban dream had become something else entirely. Proof that America's heart beats strongest in living rooms like this one, where grief is honored, truth is guarded, love multiplies instead of divides, and ordinary people keep choosing courage long after the cameras move on. Sarah Thompson no longer jumped at shadows. She no longer scanned parking lots for threats. She no longer wondered if happiness was allowed after loss. She lived it, fully, fiercely, surrounded by family that had grown wider and deeper because of, not in spite of, everything they'd endured. And somewhere, in whatever place watches over the ones left behind, Mark rested easy. His family was safe. His country was safer because of him. His legacy wasn't in medals or buildings or headlines. It was here, in this house, in these hearts, in the way they loved one another and kept moving forward. The phone on the counter stayed silent that night. No emergencies, no threats, just a text from Megan next door asking if they had extra marshmallows. Sarah smiled, typed back yes, and went to join her family. 10 years from shatter to this, from darkness to light that no shadow could touch again. America, in all its messy glory, had held them, and they, in turn, had made it a little stronger. The end. No more parts needed, no more chapters to chase. Just life, continuing, beautifully. By the spring of 2035, Evergreen had started to feel both timeless and brand new all at once, the way small-town America does when the high school wins state or when the old diner finally gets a remodel but keeps the same pie recipe. The maple trees along Maplewood Drive were fuller than ever, their leaves a deeper green, as if the street itself had decided to grow stronger roots after everything it had witnessed. Sarah Thompson, now Sarah Thompson Reynolds on official paperwork, though most folks in town still called her Sarah Thompson because legends keep their names, turned 45 that April with a backyard party that spilled onto the lawn. String lights, a bounce house for Mia and her friends, Ryan. The story that began with a phone call shattering a suburban dream had become something else entirely. Proof that America's heart beats strongest in living rooms like this one, where grief is honored, truth is guarded, love multiplies instead of divides, and ordinary people keep choosing courage long after the cameras move on. Sarah Thompson no longer jumped at shadows. She no longer scanned parking lots for threats. She no longer wondered if happiness was allowed after loss. She lived it, fully, fiercely, surrounded by family that had grown wider and deeper because of, not in spite of, everything they'd endured. And somewhere, in whatever place watches over the ones left behind, Mark rested easy. His family was safe. His country was safer because of him. His legacy wasn't in medals or buildings or headlines. It was here, in this house, in these hearts, in the way they loved one another and kept moving forward. The phone on the counter stayed silent that night. No emergencies, no threats, just a text from Megan next door asking if they had extra marshmallows. Sarah smiled, typed back yes, and went to join her family. 10 years from shatter to this, from darkness to light that no shadow could touch again. America, in all its messy glory, had held them, and they, in turn, had made it a little stronger. The end. No more parts needed, no more chapters to chase. Just life, continuing, beautifully. By the spring of 2035, Evergreen had started to feel both timeless and brand new all at once, the way small-town America does when the high school wins state or when the old diner finally gets a remodel but keeps the same pie recipe. The maple trees along Maplewood Drive were fuller than ever, their leaves a deeper green, as if the street itself had decided to grow stronger roots after everything it had witnessed. Sarah Thompson, now Sarah Thompson Reynolds on official paperwork, though most folks in town still called her Sarah Thompson because legends keep their names, turned 45 that April with a backyard party that spilled onto the lawn. String lights, a bounce house for Mia and her friends, Ryan manning the grill while Jake and his teammates tossed a baseball around the side yard. Emma came home from MIT for the weekend, taller and more confident, her hair cut short and practical, carrying stories about quantum encryption labs and late-night ramen runs with classmates from every corner of the world. She hugged her mom longer than usual at the airport pickup, whispering, "You look happy, Mom, like really happy." And Sarah was, the kind of happy that doesn't shout, just settles in quiet and deep, the way sunlight warms a room hours after the clouds part. The foundation had opened its second regional office that year, one in Columbus and now another in Austin, partnering with community colleges and veterans programs to train the next wave of ethical cyber defenders. Sarah had stepped into a chairman role, meaning more big-picture vision and less day-to-day grind, which gave her time to coach Mia's soccer team on Saturday mornings and to sit in the stands for every one of Jake's starts. His senior season was the stuff of a local legend. 17 wins, a no-hitter against rival Fairfield, and scholarship offers from Vanderbilt, Stanford, and UCLA stacking up on the kitchen counter. Colleges flew recruiters in, sat at the Thompsons' dining table eating Sarah's lasagna, talking about academics as much as ERA. Jake listened politely, then always asked the same question. "Does your program have a strong ethics component in the computer science department? My dad taught me that talent without integrity is dangerous." The recruiters blinked, then nodded vigorously because everybody knew the story by now. Mia, 9 going on 20, had blossomed into a fearless chatterbox with a knack for art, crayon drawings of superheroes that always included a tall figure in the sky watching over them, labeled Daddy Rark in careful block letters. She'd started asking deeper questions lately, the kind kids ask when they realize the world isn't always gentle. Sarah answered honestly, but gently, using words a 9-year-old could carry without breaking. Ryan was the rock during those talks, sitting cross-legged on the floor with Mia in his lap, letting her trace the metal ribbons while they explained why some grown-ups make bad choices and why others stand up anyway. Adoption Day had been finalized 2 years earlier in a courtroom full of friends and family, the judge tearing up when Mia ran to hug Sarah and Ryan at the bench. They'd kept her last name hyphenated, Thompson Reynolds, too, because belonging isn't about erasing where you came from. In June of 2036, Jake graduated high school on a perfect Ohio evening, the football field transformed with white chairs and blue and gold balloons, the marching band playing Pomp and Circumstance, while fireflies started to blink in the dusk. Sarah sat between Ryan and Emma, Mia on her lap waving a tiny Vanderbilt pennant Jake had given her as a joke. When his name was called, valedictorian, because of course he'd balanced a 4.4 GPA with 90-inning seasons, Sarah's breath caught. He walked across the stage in his cap and gown, paused at the podium for his speech, and looked straight at his family. "My dad isn't here tonight, but he's the reason I know what it means to be a man. He taught me that courage isn't loud. It's choosing to do the right thing when no one's watching, when it costs you everything. So to every graduate here, the world's going to offer you shortcuts. Don't take them. Be the kind of people my dad was." The crowd rose for a standing ovation that lasted long after he stepped down, Sarah sobbing quietly into Ryan's shoulder while Emma filmed it on her phone with shaking hands. Newspapers across the state ran the speech verbatim the next day. ESPN picked it up for a Father's Day segment. Jake just shrugged when asked about it, "I meant every word," and went back to packing for Nashville. That fall brought Emma's senior year at MIT and Jake's freshman season at Vanderbilt, where he roomed with a computer science major who became his study partner and closest friend. The house felt quieter with only Mia's energy bouncing off the walls, but it was a good quiet, the kind that comes when you realize the hard years of hands-on parenting have done their job. Sarah and Ryan rediscovered date nights, drive-in movies in the summer, minor league baseball games, quiet dinners at the Italian place downtown where they'd celebrated their engagement. They talked about traveling once Mia was older, maybe Italy, maybe a national parks road trip in an RV. Life had space to breathe now. In the winter of 2037, a new challenge arrived. Not danger this time, but opportunity. Hollywood came calling, properly this time, not the rushed Netflix docudrama, but a major studio feature film about the Apex story, with an Oscar-winning director and a script that Sarah had final approval over. They wanted her to consult, to make sure Mark's quiet heroism and the family's long road to healing shone through instead of sensationalism. After months of thinking it over, late-night talks with Ryan, calls with the kids, a long walk alone through the snow-covered cemetery, she said yes, not for fame or money, but because the world needed more stories about ordinary people choosing extraordinary integrity. Filming started the next year, parts shot on location in Evergreen with the town's full cooperation. Neighbors as extras, the high school stadium for flashback scenes, the actual Maplewood Drive house for exteriors. Sarah watched from the sidelines as actors portrayed versions of her younger self, of Mark, of the kids, and felt the surreal grace of seeing pain transformed into something that might help others carry